Creating your own light fixtures is not as hard as it seems, and this is a good foundation to show you some ways that you can actually model your own custom furniture within your projects if you're unable to find what you're looking for from either a manufacturer or a website such as Revit City or CAD Blocks. A lot of times those are helpful, but there are times whenever you run into problems and then you end up kind of sacrificing your design for the basis of just using what is already created by somebody else. So I'm going to show you quickly how to create this light fixture that I have shown in the Canvas module. It is a shade, I guess not a drum shade, but it is a shade fixture that has specific dimensions, and the best thing you can do is to find whatever fixture you want to create and then use these steps to really go through the process and think about the different ways that you can come about making that fixture. So if you're already in Revit, then you may have your file open, but if you are not, and you're just opening Revit, below the open projects, you can choose a new family. Here, I'm going to just go to File, New, and then I'm going to click Family. I'm creating a family because the way Revit works is that you have all these families that you import into a project. And so if I create this light fixture now, I can save it either in a Google Drive folder or on my desktop or in my documents in my computer to use later on. So through the time that I've been using Revit, I have created various fixtures and furniture for different projects. And I've kind of compiled this library of sorts of custom pieces that I've created, light fixtures, pendants, chairs, sofas, things like that I wasn't able to find, but I've created and saved, and now I can use them later on with other projects if I want to. So make sure that you are keeping that in mind. I found it very helpful to create a folder within my computer called Revit, and I have it categorized by different furniture types, lighting, things like that. So I can quickly find the things that I have made in an organized fashion. So it's always good to start that whenever you are starting off and you're new to Revit, because then you just do it from the very beginning and you don't have to go back through and sort of reorganize everything. So to create a new family, you go to File and then New Family, and then here you're given a dialog box of choosing what type of family you're going to create. This is where you would choose if you're going to create a piece of furniture, an electrical fixture. There's all different things you can read through and see the different things. So I'm going to go over here. A lot of times people will create just a generic model, and that works in some instances, but a lot of times whenever you get down later on in the semester, we're going to talk about creating an FF&E schedule. So if you're not categorizing these things, then it won't accurately pick that up for your schedule. So try to find the most closely related category here. So if you look up here to where lighting fixtures are located, there's a ceiling-based one, a wall-based one, and then a generic lighting fixture. I tend to be drawn towards, the lighting fixture, the generic one, because it doesn't limit me to have a ceiling in place if I am trying to render and maybe I have a really, really high ceiling and I don't want to create this long pendant to have this thing hang down because you're not actually going to see it, which you can do if you would like to create the ceiling based fixture or a wall based fixture for a sconce, for instance. But you're a little bit more flexible if you just click the generic one, and so I'm going to choose the generic one here and click open. Whenever you open this up, you're shown the plan view, and over here are your views on the project browser. You can click into the different views, but right now all I have is the light source, and you can see that there in the middle. One of the things that you often forget is that right now this is just kind of a floating, if I were to go to a front elevation and I clicked it and it didn't show up, so I'm going to use the quick keys ZE for zoom extends. So I really just have this like floating orb, if you will. If I want to see how high that is, I can click on that reference line, and it's telling me that that light source is only 4'6" from the ground. I'm creating a pendant that is going to go on let's say a 9-foot ceiling, and I maybe only want it to hang down, I don't know, 3 feet. So I want that light source to actually be more around 6 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 6 feet and move that up a little bit. You can change that to whatever height you need that to be, but keep in mind that whenever you place it into your plan, that will affect where it hangs and how it sits. So you have here your front view and then your plan view. Now, my light fixture is a very, very simple one, and I did that on purpose for this project. So I actually prefer to do this in elevation for this type of fixture. So when you're modeling in Revit, you're going to basically just be drawing different pieces of it. And I'm going to go over here to the Create tab on the ribbon. And so you have right here all these various forms. You can do an extrusion, a blend, a revolve, a sweep blend, and a void form. There are several ways that you can go about this. I prefer for something this simple to use a revolve, but I'll show you a couple different steps. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create model lines that are kind of my guidelines that I can use to set up, and then I don't have to do a ton of measuring while I'm doing this. So right now the bottom diameter of my fixture is 28.3 inches, which divided in half, so the radius would be 14.15 inches. So I'm going to create a model line, and I'm going to actually offset it 14.15 inches, and I'm going to draw it here just up that center axis line. So that gives me the bottom dimension of my fixture. Now the next line I'm going to draw is the height of my shade. So that is 13.3 inches, and I'm going to offset it again just because it simplifies things, and I'll just draw it here from my horizontal axis. So there I have the bottom limits, I guess, and then the top height of my shade. Now another line that I'd like to have is the top of my frame, the top of my frame, or the top of my shade, is 4.5 inches in diameter. So divided by 2, that is 2.25 inches. So I'm going to do one more line, go back to create a model line, one more line. I'm going to offset it 2.25 inches, and I'm going to draw it from this, gotta go the other direction. Draw it from this line. So here I have where my top point is, my bottom point, and then the center line. So since I'm using revolve, I really only am drawing half of my fixture. The revolve command essentially is creating a section and having it revolve around an axis. So for this type of fixture, it's very, very simple. I'm going to start here, and I am going to click down here on this bottom corner, and then I'm going to bring it up here to this top corner. Let me zoom in so I can make sure I'm clicking on that point. And then I'm going to just, because this is a shade and it's very, very thin, I'm going to make it 1/4 of an inch thick, because that's, to me, about, it's much larger than what it would be normally, but it does give me a little bit of thickness here. So I made it 1/4 of an inch thick, and then I'm going to go down and then create a parallel line and then close that. So when you are modeling and doing these, creating different forms, you have to actually have closed lines in order for them to work successfully. So since I'm still in the middle of modifying, I'm in sketch mode here. Now, since I've drawn my shape, I'm going to have an axis line that I need to designate. So that is basically what line is my form going to revolve around this shape that I've drawn. So the axis line, I'm actually going to just pick this center line. So you can either draw a line or you can use pick lines. I chose pick lines and I'm using the center line. So I'm going to pick that, and then I'm going to click the check mark, and there my shade has now revolved around that axis. I'm going to click into 3D view, and I'm going to have to hit ZE again so I can get zoom extends. Sorry, I forgot to find it. There we go. So it zooms out so I can see it. Now here you have your the fixture. Now if I rotate around, you can see it's an actual three-dimensional fixture. Go underneath and it's open there as well. So I'm going to go back to my front elevation. One of the other things that I'm missing here is the top of this shade. And sometimes with this type of process, you have to sort of fudge a little bit and kind of make things up as you go, because maybe what they have this fixture shown, or how they have it shown, is a little too complicated to model, and it's a small little detail that you won't necessarily see. So sometimes you may have to do a little bit of creative license there to create something that will work, that's not going to take you 10 years to make. So for this top portion here that's going to be right at the center, I am going to use extrusion, because this will be a pretty easy thing. So I'm going to click extrusion, and basically extrusion, you choose the height and then you tell it how high it's going to go, and then it creates that form. So I'm going to actually just use a circle, and I'm going to select the center here, and I'm going to make it just to the inside of that shade there, so 2 inches. Now over here you can choose where your extrusion starts and where it ends. That's the height. I can't remember exactly. I guess it would be 7 foot 1.3 inches, because it's at the top of that fixture. But I'm just going to go ahead and put in 7 feet, and I'll show you how I can edit that in a second. So excuse me, I'm going to make this 8 feet so you can see it, and then I'll have it start at 7 feet, so it really only will be a foot high. And I'm just going to click apply, and then I will do the check mark there. So when I go into my elevation view, there I have my extrusion, and it looks a little silly. So if you want to make it smaller, you can just use these arrows and drag it down. So this piece is actually 1/2 inch tall. And so you can either do that by dragging it where you need it, placing it, and then going over here to see what the actual constraints are numerically, or you can drop another model line in, which I think is a little bit easier. So I'm going to go create model line, and then I'm going to just offset it by 1/2 inch. I'm going to draw from here this direction, so there it's a little bit bigger than what it should be. So I'm going to click on that extrusion, and I'm going to drag it down just a little bit so that it is even with my model line, and there I have 1/2 inch. So now I'm going to delete my model lines to just clean it up a little bit and get it out of my way. The last bit of information here that I'm missing for this fixture, besides finishes, is that there is a rod, essentially, or a cord that it is hanging from. Sometimes this is done as a chain, and you can use revolve, or you can create a sweep to draw a chain, and I can show you that later on in the semester. But for the purpose of this demonstration, to keep it fairly simple, I'm going to go back to my plan view, and then I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to, you can do this with an extrusion, you can do it with a revolve, you can do it with a sweep. So I'll show you the sweep version just for fun. So I'll go back to the front elevation, and let's say, let me draw another reference line here, because I want the height of my ceiling to be at 9 feet. So I'm just going to offset this line by 9 feet, going to draw it along the floor line, and then now I have a 9 foot, this is where my ceiling is. So let me go to, I'm still in the right view. I'm in the front elevation view, and then I'm going to go create, and then I'm going to choose sweep. So a sweep is basically you are sketching a path or picking a path, and you draw that path as a single line, whether that be a line that is a loop of some sort or just a straight line. And then once you have drawn that line, you are then selecting a profile for that to follow. So since this is just a round rod, this will be a very simple sweep. So I'm going to click sketch path because to me that's a little bit easier. And just like any other sketch mode, you have many different options of how you can draw this depending on what you're drawing. I'm just going to draw a straight line because mine is going to the ceiling. So I click there in the center on the center line and I take it to the ceiling, and then I click the check mark because I'm done sketching the path. Now I need to edit the profile. So whenever I edit the profile, right now I'm looking at it in elevation. So I'm going to need to actually see the plan view of it. So turn it 90 degrees and look at it from the top essentially. So there I'm going to look at the plan view. So I'm going to select open view. And then I want this to be a 1/2 inch rod, which is probably a little bit large. So I'm going to make the radius 0.25 inches, so 1/4 inch. So there's my 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to click the check mark. And now if I go back to the front elevation, I'm still here in the sweep mode. All you can see is my path. If I look at it from the floor plan, you see my profile, but nothing has actually been created because I'm still in the sketch mode. So I'm going to go back so you can see this happen from elevation. So then I'm going to click the check mark to finish the sketch. And there you see it's now a 3-dimensional object. If I go to my 3D view, you can see I have now created this rod that hangs down from the ceiling. So then what you can do here is you can do another extrusion or a revolve at the top if you want to create your top plate, or you can simply copy this one and drag it up there, which is what I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to the front view. I will select here and hit Command C or Control C, and then Command or Control V, and then drag it up there. I want mine to actually be down where it's visible from the inside, the interior. So I'm going to click off of it and then select it again so I can have it a more accurate selection point. So MV for move. I'm going to move from the center of that portion to the center here. It didn't quite snap right. So from the center to the center. And then I'm going to actually edit my sweep so that it doesn't cut through like this. So I'm going to edit the path here. So I'm going to go back to sketch path, and there it's taken away my 3D form. I'm just going to drag this down and then check, and there now my sweep has been edited. So now I have, if I go to my 3D view, I have this light fixture, this pendant that is going to turn on whenever I am rendering. The only other thing that I haven't done is apply finishes. So if I put it in a realistic view, you can see your light source, and you can also see all of the finishes are just gray. So in this, you've probably created these custom materials, whether it just be by color or it's a metal or something like that. And you do that the same as any of the other processes that we did. Sometimes you don't even have to use an image, but if you have an image of that material, that works as well. And so you would create those in your materials library. You also need to create those here in the light fixture family. And so you have them both in your project and in your family, and then you can just apply them by using the paintbrush. If you go to, in modify, here you have the paint command. So PT would be the quick key. You can select that, and then you can apply finishes just by clicking if you watch the little video that drops down there. So that's where you apply finishes. Once you have finished that, then you can click load into project and close. So it's going to ask me, do I want to save changes to family 1? Yes, of course I do. I've spent time on this. I want to save it, and then I have it for future reference. So I'm going to go in here, and then I'm going to find my Revit folder, and then I'm going to select lighting. And then what I tend to do here, you can see all the ones that I've actually made. So what I tend to do is I name the file the same as what the product actually is, by manufacturer and the name of the light, so that it's easier for me when I go into specifying. I know exactly what I've selected and what I've placed places. So I would name this, save it, and then it will automatically import that into your project. Now, if you have not imported, or if you've already created the fixture and you are in your project, then that's a whole nother thing. You need to load objects into your project just like a component, like you did from the website. So you'll have to do that. You'll find your light fixture, you'll import it, and then you can apply that to your ceiling. So I hope that was helpful. Don't forget, you have various ways of creating things. A void form is essentially creating an extrusion that takes away portions of what you may have drawn. So if you have a very unique or interesting fixture, you may have to do a void form to cut out different sections. A sweep blend is going to basically give you, if you watch these little videos, it's helpful, but it gives you a sweep, but then it can change what the profile is as it moves along the sweep to give you an interesting shape. We've talked about sweep, we've talked about revolve. Blend is going to be an extrusion that takes 2 shapes and blends into one as it extrudes. And then extrusion is done there. You can do an extrusion both horizontally or vertically. So keep that in mind whenever you are looking at creating different furniture pieces or other light fixtures. The sky's the limit, really, and you can really spend a lot of time doing this if you want to make things intricate. But for the sake of this project and keeping things simple, I wanted to keep a simple project